Well, hello, my friends. We meet again. It's been a while. Where should we begin? Now, today, we're going to be doing something just a little bit different from my normal videos here. Last week, or 3 weeks, I should say, has been about minus 25 or colder every single day. So I've been spending a lot of time, inside, sitting on the computer on Reddit, just talking about different metal and stuff. And no, I'm not going to tell you the name of my Reddit account here, but one of the posts that I saw recently really got me thinking, and I saw this a few days ago. I think it was posted, but it had me thinking about this for a while. And the post here says, it's on the Melodic death metal subreddit here, and it says, with a picture of Death Symbolic, that's right, we're talking about death again today, and it says, "This is a Melodeath album through and through, and I'm tired of pretending it's not." In the subtext here, it says, "This is way more melodic than Slaughter of the Soul, TBH, to be honest." Now, that last statement, I don't know, like maybe you could definitely argue that, but to me, the reason why I thought this was very interesting is that I always just assumed people considered Symbolic a melodic death metal album. It's melodies, beautiful melodies combined with the death metal sound and aesthetics and vocals, right? However, I was pretty surprised to see, the comments were kind of split here. It wasn't exactly all in agreement, right? First guy says 81 upvotes. "This is an oversimplification of one of the best metal albums ever. Not just death metal or melodic death metal, like you put it." Yeah, of course, right? One of the best, metal albums of all time. One of my favorites, easily, for sure. But yeah, this guy says here, "I feel like the sub has broadened the classification to the point where it has no meaning. Melodeath was originally used to define death metal that used more traditional rock or metal song structures with melodic hooks and death vocals. Bands like Opeth, Gojira, Sepultura, Entombed, and Death have never been defined as melodeath. Just because something has a melody and it is death metal doesn't make it melodeath, and that is not a bad thing. The late Death albums basically invented tech death." Okay, this is an interesting comment. He essentially contradicts himself here. All the songs on this album are structured in the exact same way, in a way that a lot of pop songs and rock songs, for that matter, especially Iron Maiden songs, are structured in the same way. Go see my video on Death song structures for more examples of this. So by this guy's definition, Death, especially Symbolic, would be considered melodic death metal. And he says another interesting comment here. The late Death albums basically invented tech death. Okay, The Sound of Perseverance, I can kind of see that, think of A Moment of Clarity and the end of To Forgive Is to Suffer, for example. Those are very, very kind of tech death-esque parts and moments, right? You can even consider Human or Individual Thought Patterns. You get a lot of proto-tech death in here, but Symbolic, bro? Really? I don't really hear any tech death at all on this album. There's no blast beats, there's no a million BPM sweeps. There's almost nothing that really defines tech death for me on this album. And then you might also say, well, Varvis, who cares? Well, you clicked on the video, bro. You tell me. So let's continue reading on here. So this guy replies, "You were very correct until you said the later death material, quote, basically invented tech death metal, which is all kinds of false." I agree with that. Brother, you think this is tech death? That's exactly my point. This is not tech death in any means. It's proto-tech death alongside bands like Cynic and Atheist. Okay, I can kind of get that, but to me, Symbolic especially is very, very, I don't really necessarily want to say straightforward, but there's nothing really that overtly technical about a lot of these riffs. Maybe the drumming, you could argue, solos, I suppose, right? But it's not tech death at all, right? Individual Thought Patterns and Human and The Sound of Perseverance is much, much, much more tech death, really. Death Symbolic is actually a poor example, as this is the 1995 album. Their first proto-tech death album was 1991. Human, okay, well, yeah. I agree. I mean, just the bass style alone from Death's Individual Thought Patterns and Cynic's Focus became a staple in later tech death. Yeah, of course, with the fretless bass and everything like that. And then this guy goes on to say that Chonor Bodom got redefined as power metal, which, does anybody really consider them power metal? Really? They're power melodeath, the best, I guess you could say. OP states he would argue Symbolic is far from tech death, and he gets downvoted. Okay. Basically, I would say this thread is half in agreement, half not, right? So I was very curious, right? I thought, okay, doesn't everybody just consider this melodic death metal? So I went on RYM, which is, Rate Your Music, sort of my go-to place for music nerdage, I guess you could say. And the first genre that it describes here is technical death metal. Like, bro, really? Like, okay, progressive metal, I can definitely see that. Yeah, okay, sure. Melodic death metal, I'm glad it's there. But if we click on tech death and look at these top ranked albums, does Symbolic by Death sound like any of these? Maybe Atheist, maybe, but still not even really. You know, Symbolic is a lot different from None So Vile, Obscura, Immolation. Like, this is all very, very different things. And the whole purpose of genres is to make it easier for you to find similar artists, right? Think of a library. If you are enjoying a historical book on, I don't know, say like the Siege of Vienna, just for an example, I guess. I did a history degree. You know, I'm a big nerd about this stuff. But, you know, in that same section, when you're looking for more texts on the Siege of Vienna, and you pulled another book, and it says something to do with the Austrian Navy in the 1900s. What does that have anything to do really with the Siege of Vienna, besides being, like, tangentially part of, like, the same overall scene, I guess, right? Symbolic is not a tech death record, and this does not sound like anything else. Like, let's look at the full chart here. Okay, like Human, you could definitely argue a little bit of tech on there, I would say. Sound of Perseverance, yep. Yeah, there's individual thought patterns, right? But to me, like, again, like, none of these sound like Symbolic. Not at all. Not at all. But if we go on melodic death metal, okay, now we're getting a little closer here. I would say a lot of the riffage and a lot of the songs on Symbolic sound a lot like these albums, especially Heartwork, Slaughter of the Soul, and Digester Race. Like, I think there's actually a lot in common between Digester Race and Symbolic that people don't really realize here. All right, let's just play some of the riff. Like, are you really gonna sit there and tell me that this is not melodic death metal? Like, that's some Symbolic, and what's some other ones? Oh, you know, Without Judgment too. What's some other ones? Let's see. We also have... I don't remember exactly how to play this one, so just cut me a break here. Something like that anyways. And then, like, even you have, like, the bridge in that song sounds something very similar to the Digester Race. Or even like Crystal Mountain, man. Like, how can anybody listen to Crystal Mountain and say that it's like not melodic death metal? In fact, it sounds a lot like something you would hear off Heartwork, to be honest, and the Digester Race. You know, I kind of screwed that up, but like, you know, even like the clean part, right? You know, like, that's melodic death metal to a T, right? You know. Like, bro, come on, this is melodic death metal. You know what I mean? Like, if Heartwork is melodeath, Symbolic is for sure melodic death metal. Anyways, you know, let's keep looking here, right? So yeah, on this one, Discogs.com, death metal, progressive metal, technical death metal, melodeath is even on here. Like, what? I don't understand why this isn't considered melodic death metal as like one of the foundational albums, along with like the Digester Race, Slaughter of the Soul, and the Galley. You know what I mean? Like, why? Is it just because it was from America, right? It's not a Swedish band? Like, is that why? I don't know, man. Like, again, I don't know why this is considered tech death in any sense, and then at the same breath, you say it's not melodic death metal. I just don't really understand. And, you know, I love arguing about genres, and I love, you know, discussing these things, but to me, man, like, Symbolic's melodeath. Like, it's as simple as that. And I think this quote right here really sort of symbolizes this sort of attitude that a lot of people have. Melodic death metal is death metal with melody. Like, you listen to the early old school death metal stuff. Why do we call it old school death metal? Because these bands focus on chromatic movements and making it sound ugly and dissonant and dirty and brutal, right? That's what you want it to sound like. You take the guitar tones, you play a whole bunch of chromatic riffs. That's not to say you can't have some cool melodies in there, like just listen to Rapture by Morbid Angel, which I did a deep dive on, which you should go check out, right? There's some melodies in there, but it's not these grand, beautiful melodies like we have on Symbolic, like we have on the Jester Race, like we have on Slaughter of the Soul. You know what I mean? Like, melodic death metal is death metal with melody. It developing into more specific sound over time doesn't negate that melodeath is at its root death metal plus melodies. I don't know why people seem to think that melodeath didn't exist before the genesis of the Gothenburg sound, because it definitely did. And that is what I'm trying to get at here. If you enjoyed Symbolic, you enjoyed what was being undone here, you enjoyed the riffs, you enjoyed the melodies, you enjoyed the overall sound of it, I don't necessarily think that you are going to enjoy tech death. Like, it's a lot of the tech death stuff is way different. Like, again, Obscura, great album. None So Vile, also great album. But these are about like as far as you can get away from each other in sound as you possibly can, while still being under the broad umbrella of like death metal. You know what I mean? Whereas melodic death metal, if you like Symbolic, you'll probably like Anatomy of the Beast, probably like Hard Work, you'll probably like Slaughter of the Soul, you'll probably like the Jester Race. Like, these are a lot more similar to the sound that you're hearing on Symbolic. And again, this is sort of like my problem. I made that video on metalcore like last year around the same time, and saying that, you know, if you liked, say, August Burns Red Constellations, and you go and type in metalcore, what are you going to get recommended? You're going to get like recommended like Jane Doe by Converge, like Botch. Those albums do not sound like that, even though they're considered like the same genre, right? And that's where I'm getting to my point here. Genres are important for us to organize things and to be able to find things and recommend them to people. Just because you liked Symbolic doesn't necessarily mean you're gonna like, you know, Onset of Putrefaction or Obscura. You know, like, you're not. Or even, you know, Planetary Duality. Like, it's very far away from that. Whereas, you know, if you like Symbolic, the Jester Race is much closer in style and structure and melodies and tempo and guitar playing than the other stuff. So, in my mind, I think we just settle the debate and we just call Symbolic death metal. You know, death the band metal, because there's not much that really sounds like it. I will argue that it's not completely death metal, nor is it completely melodeath, nor is it completely prog metal. I think you got a little bit of groove metal in there too, a little bit of thrash here and there too. Like, it's very unique and interesting album, and I think that's why, you know, I'm still talking about it today, 30 years later, right? So anyways, I just wanted to make a video on that today. If you enjoyed the style of like responding to comments or ideas, you know, leave that down below. My name has been Varvis. Thanks for watching, you guys. Cheers.